My name is Sriram. I am a principal cloud solution architect with Microsoft. Most of my career has been spent deriving insights from data. We will be talking throughout this journey about various data and AI products Microsoft offer and how they work. Thanks for visiting this channel. Let's talk about Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric is an all in one analytics solution for enterprises that covers everything from data movement to data science, real time analytics, and business intelligence, which are all the essential components. And we will be talking about all these areas one by one. But today, our emphasis is on data movement and especially on data engineering. Data engineering is about moving the data from source systems into the fabric and storing that data in a data lake. With Fabric, you don't need to piece together different services. Instead, Microsoft brought all the services into a SaaS foundation, thus bringing all the familiar components you know about, such as Power BI, Azure Synapse, and Azure Data Factory, into a single integrated environment. And this is what we call Fabric. And today's emphasis is about data engineering, and we will see how to perform data engineering in Fabric. Microsoft Fabric's main tool to perform data engineering is Data Factory. Data Factory further comprises of two high-level features. One, data flows. Second, data pipelines. Let's first talk about data pipelines. Data pipelines enable you to orchestrate various activities that you perform as part of data engineering. These activities could be orchestrated just how you used to orchestrate in Azure Data Factory. And there is a rich experience of incorporating various activities within the umbrella of this orchestration. Coming to data flows provide a low code interface for ingesting data from hundreds of data sources. And it is primarily built for business user personas who are familiar using Power Query experience with, for example, Power BI data flows that you are familiar with. So data flows are branded as data flows Gen 2, which is going to be the next video. For this video, let's say we have something called data flows, which we'll be discussing further, but let's concentrate more on how to do data pipelines. There are three different ways that we could ingest the data from a source system into a fabric lakehouse. The first two methods are part of data factory data pipeline experience, which is the point of emphasis today. Let's talk about data flow gen 2 experience in the next video, and I will explain you all the advantages and disadvantages of using each approach. The approach of data pipeline has two different modalities associated with that. The first one is fully code yourself. So you could actually implement any kind of customization in the form of notebooks or any available tasks within the data pipeline. And you could move the data from source system into a fabric lakehouse. Or you don't need to write a single line of code and use the copy task to copy the data from source system into the fabric lakehouse. I'm going to show both these activities within the data pipeline, namely fully code yourself and no code experience, as two separate videos, just to show you all the different features associated with each component. So today's emphasis, as you would have realized by now, is number one, which is write your code in the Spark notebooks. Use any additional activities that are available within data pipeline to properly orchestrate. Let's zoom into the data pipeline experience with fully coding capabilities that we are emphasizing in today's video. So a data pipeline comprises of series of activities which are nothing but the tasks that does different things. For example, the rest task or the rest activity, which is also called as web activity, is an activity in this case is fetching the required access token to log into the PostgreSQL database. And there are couple of notebooks as part of this data pipeline, which are notebook 1 and notebook 2. Reads the metadata from PostgreSQL based on the user input and determines what are all the different tables that needs to be loaded and what are all the different schemas those tables are part of. And of course, the service principal that is used to authenticate the PostgreSQL have the read privileges on the database. And this is the most secure way of authenticating to PostgreSQL, which is using Microsoft Entra ID. And the notebook 2 actually loads the data based on the metadata provided by notebook 1. Notebook 1 and notebook 2 talk to each other using a common storage, wherein notebook 2 looks up the output that is stored by notebook 1. And finally, once a notebook 2 loads the data into the fabric, then all the tables that user wants from the source PostgreSQL will be available in the fabric lakehouse. Let's see in real action how all of this happens, and I will show you the actual code and the actual data pipeline and X user. So analytics at the rate of sriram.msft.com. So this is how you need to fetch the token. You need to go to click on Cloud Shell. It'll open a bash below, and then you get AC account. You run the command AC account, get access token, where the resource type is OSS RTBMS. And you get an access token such as this, which actually usually is almost active for 59 minutes, 59 seconds, and then it expires. So by the time I upload this video, this token is null and void anyways. So that's the primary advantage of using the tokens. So you can actually paste the password. From there, press OK, and you connect to the Azure PostgreSQL server. Azure PostgreSQL server contains a database called AdventureWorks. There are multiple schemas within AdventureWorks, and user can choose one schema or many schemas that they want the tables. As part of Contoso sales organization, we are planning to do data engineering to move the source tables from Postgres into Contoso Sales Lakehouse. Go to filter all the lakehouses underneath this workspace. You have Lakehouse Bronze, Lakehouse Gold, Lakehouse Silver. We will be loading all of our tables into Lakehouse Bronze. So this is the point of entry into the fabric. And usually this is a representation of the source. Since source is a relational table, you will be storing all the information in the Lakehouse Bronze as a relational table. So in order to do that, we have to actually choose the data engineering experience. If you have access to Microsoft Fabric provided your tenant administrator have granted you the required permissions, you will see something similar. So the data engineering is the experience which we are looking. As part of data engineering experience, you have access to multiple things. You have access to notebooks, you have access to pipeline, so on and so forth. And also, there is something called Data Factory. If you click Data Factory, you will have, like I said, two primary modes, Data Flow Gen 2 and the Data Pipeline. Today, our focus is on Data Pipeline. Let's select that. And you can create a pipeline. As you can imagine, I have already created the pipelines. So let's go to a pipeline which is load PostgreSQL tables to Fabric. You load the pipeline, and within pipeline you have multiple activities like I mentioned in the architecture diagram. First, you get the access token. If you remember the Postgres login exercise, I have done it for a reason to show you how to do it manually. But when we are doing in the notebook, we won't do manually with our user ID, but instead we would use something called a batch ID or what we call service principal to get the access token. So this is the web activity which is available as part of the pipeline. So you get the web activity, you go to settings, you configure. Of course, you need to make a post call as I am showing here. The content type is so and so, and then you have to give the required information within the body saying that you are actually asking the client ID and the client secret, etc. On behalf of that, you are asking, okay, give me a token, right? So this token is the access token that we use down the line, which is same as the access token I used when I logged in manually. So don't worry, all of this body, all of this code that I have used will be available to you at a specified link, which I will post um, underneath the video. So you can actually go there and see the blog and get all of the code. So just understand the concepts. How to code is not important, that I will actually share with you. Then we call something called the notebook. The notebook actually fetches all the metadata elements for which the user asks the information about. So this particular pipeline has the parameters that are set up, and in this case, user is providing an array saying that they need all the tables underneath human resources and the person schemas respectively. So this notebook take those parameters that are supplied as part of the pipeline activity, and if you go to the settings of the table, you can see that you actually are calling a notebook called read source schema, and this code will also be available to you, don't worry about that. And we'll be passing bunch of parameters to this notebook. So one of the parameters that we pass as part of this particular activity is uh, a password parameter. Remember, the password parameter is the access token we get from get access token activity, and the syntax for that is, you don't need to write and remember this. Just go to activity output, just select, like I need the output from this particular activity, right, which auto fills up to here, and access token is the access token underneath that output. So you run this notebook. I will later review the two notebooks. Right. Let's look at this pipeline. The first activity we call is the lookup activity. The lookup activity get the objects that are loaded by the previous notebook task. If you go to the settings, you will see I am actually storing the output of the previous task within the lakehouse itself in a place called pg dictionary underneath that pg dictionary string.txt, which is a JSON that will be passed as an input to the next notebook. So, how does that look like? Let's go and see what exactly is that string. and how it appears. So go to the Contoso sales again, go to the filter on the lake house, go to lake house bronze, and the lake house contains tables and files. In our case, I am storing it in underneath files. So it is called PG dictionary string, and it stores something like that. For example, for table of schema human resources, you have a bunch of tables that are available, and we are saying these are the array of elements that need to be loaded. So going back here to our pipeline, so we get all of those objects. Again, we get the access token for the PostgreSQL. So this is one you already have seen. And now we will loop through all the items, right? Every schema, every table. And while looping, you will pass some settings. As you can see here, you're passing the table name, the table schema from what you have seen before, right? It's an array of table name and a table schema. And you will pass the token to this particular load tables notebook. And whatever logic is there in the notebook, the notebook runs, and the output of that would be you will be seeing in your lake house a bunch of tables such as these, like human resources and the person, and all of those tables that are loaded in the bronze layer. So next, let's see, since we have reviewed the pipeline, now let's see the logic within the notebook. I'll briefly review those two notebooks, but I will write all the details in a blog so that you could follow them easily later. So the first notebook is read source schema. We'll be passing. Remember the schemas to load for the first notebook are human resources and the person array. Um, don't worry about the password that we are passing to this notebook. Like this, you can just leave it as null. It doesn't really matter. These two are coming from the pipeline to the notebook. So how is this possible? So very important thing is, in order for this cell to be parameters, if you're familiar, like with the data breaks, there are widgets over there. It's similar to that, right? So this is a parameter. You're saying whatever this cell contains are parameters. So we're not using the third one, just that first two parameters. So go here, and you have to toggle this as a parameter cell. This is very important, okay? You should remember to do this. Otherwise, you cannot send parameters to the notebook. So then after that, really what I'm doing is I'm using PostgreSQL's um connection string, and I'm just logging in with the password that we got from the access token in the pipeline. Moving on, let's see the next few lines of the code. We just are converting the filter parameters that we got into a meaningful query without hard coding, and that query would be passed as a parameter to the JDBC string as shown here. Um, so the Postgres JDBC takes the URL, the query, and the properties that we pass to that, and it will actually give us a data frame that is populated with the specified list. So then the key logic in this notebook is you saving the dictionary string in a common location that would be actually used by the next pipeline, and that's the key. And The shared location is nothing but the API path. This is very important. And please do remember, you copy that API path and then um, paste that API path here. And you pretty much use actually a lookup activity to look into the same path when we are configuring the next pipeline. And that is the key logic in this notebook, and some of the key features that I discussed. And other than that, it's just a very straightforward notebook. And the lookup activity settings are set to read the PG dictionary text that goes to the next notebook. So now let's see how next notebook looks like. The next notebook takes the table name, the schema name that comes inside as parameters. Again, I toggle this cell as a parameter cell. And the password, you can just leave all of these blanks. They have no bearing because these properties are coming from outside. So we are just loading. It's a simple save as delta location. So everything that we are saving as lakehouse tables are in fact delta tables, so they have format of delta table, and we are just storing them as schema name underscore table name, and just we go read from the source with again no hard coding anywhere. So just read them and load them. You would ask me, hey, can we do the exact same exercise with copy activity, right, instead of doing it all through notebooks? Absolutely yes, and that would be the next recording where it is a no code experience or a
We have
minimal
seen the
code
data
experience.
pipelines experience in Microsoft Fabric, and we have learned highly customizing the code through Spark notebooks utilizing the data pipelines. And that concludes this video. See you in the next video. Bye.